Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we talk all things Colorado Rockies. We got a lot to talk about today, so let's jump into it. And first, let's talk about, the one thing that might bring people together. And let's face it, we're in a divisive time. We're in a time where it's hard for everyone to come together and collectively agree on something. But I would say one thing that all Rockies fans can agree on is that they want Dick Monfort to sell the team. It has been a growing feeling, a growing thought, really for quite some time now. I would say it started to explode once Jeff Bridich decided to move Nolan Arenado for essentially a bag of peanuts, but you also paid $50 million for that bag of peanuts as well. Then when they fired Jeff Bridich, who made that deal, they decided to hire internally with Bill Schmidt. And there was just no movement made on that hiring in terms of development, in terms of really going outside of the organization. And so now we're at this point where if you click on really any Instagram, Twitter, any sort of article online, number one comment is always going to be sell the team. And this has been a thought and a feeling for quite some time now for Rockies fans. And let's face it, let's even compare Monfort to some of the other Colorado sports franchise owners. You've got the Rockies, who own the Avs, the Nuggets. They also own Arsenal. And the Rockies are interesting because maybe they're not the most present at games or anything like that, but they're willing to spend. And you see that with the Avs right now, one of the best teams ever to play in the NHL. You've got the Denver Nuggets, who just had a wildly successful offseason, not afraid to spend, and one of the best teams in the NBA. So there's the Kroenke example. Then you've got the Walton family, who owns the Denver Broncos. The Walton family, very present, right? You see them in the press box at every single game, and also not afraid to spend, both on and off the field, all the time. You hear about how they're replacing the grass or the turf on the field just to ensure that it's better for the players to play on. They're not afraid to spend both off the field as well as being aggressive on the field, right? They've got a great setup. They obviously have now Sean Payton and everything like that for the Broncos. And you just see success down the line. 3 franchises that in recent history, right, just this past season, the last couple seasons, have all been great. And all the ownership groups have been great, right? You have to be pleased with all 3 of those ownership groups. We now change and shift our attention to the Colorado Rockies, where that just hasn't been the same. Where when the Rockies do spend money, it's deals that just don't make sense. The Chris Bryant deal at the time and now made no sense because you just traded away possibly one of the most favorite and loved players in franchise history. Maybe not most loved, right? That probably belongs to Walker or Helton. But Arenado for sure was in that pantheon of most loved players in Colorado sports. And you traded him away for not good prospects and a very average pitcher. You gave up $50 million, and then the next offseason, you signed Chris Bryant. That doesn't make sense. And it's those kind of moves that frustrates fans. Now let's jump to obviously present day, where it really feels like Monfort has kind of taken notice, because what the Rockies are doing now is not something we're familiar with. Paul DePodesta is building a team and is building a front office. That is exciting. That is actually something to look forward to for the Rockies. Do I think this will change the perception of Dick Monfort? No. I think it will take years to do that. And let's face it, it can be hard as an ownership group. Like, you're probably going to get a lot of blame, but rightfully so. You're the ones that have all the money. You're the ones that have the ability to spend and to make some of these decisions. So there is accountability there. However, if this works with DePodesta and the front office he's building, then you might see things lessen for Monfort. I think step 1 is complete in terms of building out this front office, but there's still a huge and important legwork, and that's actually getting talent on the field. and you will have to spend in order to have that talent. Monfort has shown in the past he's not afraid to spend, but it has to be smart, it has to make sense, and it has to be a product that fans are willing to cheer for. So, do I think that that public perception can change? I do, but it's not going to be overnight. It's going to be years down the road. So we'll see. Right now, it probably can't get worse than last year for public perception for Monfort and the Rockies. Coors Field is just such a popular place to attend for games, whether you're from out of town or in-state. It's just an awesome ballpark. So you really didn't see it for many seasons because it was like, well, attendance is still pretty good. This team is still getting top 10 in attendance. But finally, we saw that start to dip last year. And I think last season was a wake-up call for Monfort that changes need to be made, and we're finally starting to see that happen. So obviously exciting to see the front office that we have. You want the fire to remain hot under Monfort just so he doesn't get complacent and that, this team can actually build towards something. And I also will note that, hey, Monfort isn't going to get the same type of spending that you'll see in LA or New York. I understand that. I don't expect the Rockies to have the same payroll as the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Mets, right? But they should have a payroll that's in the top 15, top 18 in baseball. That's not a crazy thing to wish or to expect. And I don't expect that this season, but when the Rockies expect to actually be good, you have to actually be willing to spend, and you can't make stupid trades, and you can't make stupid signings. And that was the Rockies' MO for the last 4 or 5 years. But regardless, that's my take right now on the public perception of Monfort and of this team. But maybe things will change, and I think this has been a step in the right direction. Let's move on, though, because we could talk about Dick Monfort for, well, maybe not hours, but we could talk about him for quite some time. Let's talk about Tatsuya Imai, who has now just a week to sign from Japan. He is essentially a star pitcher. He's probably the top prospect still available. And for Imai, you would think have a lot of interest from MLB teams, but there really hasn't been much right now for him. And he's a guy who had a 1.9 ERA, had about 180 strikeouts, and in the season before did about the exact same thing. He has a 99-mile-an-hour fastball. He has a sinker, a curveball, and similar to Murakami, I think this is an opportunity for the Rockies to make an inquiry because maybe that expected contract has gone down. For Murakami, we were all shocked about what was spent, what the White Sox spent on him. And so, once again, we're in this place where Imai, there's an opportunity for the Rockies to maybe strike because he undoubtedly be the number one pitcher in Colorado. He would for sure be the ace. And guess what? He says he wants to beat the Dodgers. And what's better than joining a 45-win team to beat the LA Dodgers? I can't think of anything. And that's probably the biggest thing in this equation. He probably wants to go to an actual contender, leaving Japan in the middle of his prime. But if you're Colorado, why not look at offering something? At least put an offer out so he can say no. That's half the battle. If you offer him no, I want to play for a contender, great. But at least you're thinking outside the box. And at least building towards something. But again, I don't see a world where he would sign with the Rockies unless they offered just a boat ton more than the other contenders that are interested. But there's only a week to sign. That price could dip like we saw with Murakami, but who knows at this point. I think for the Rockies, it's just thinking outside the box. You have a starting rotation with a ton of inexperience. This would obviously give you a huge boost in that. But at the same time, I would get why the Rockies, hey, if he's won a $100 million contract and we stink this year, I get why you wouldn't go after him, but I think it's worth an inquiry at the very least. So just keep an eye on that. He has to sign by the end of this week or he will return to the Japanese league. So until then, let's talk about the guys who have actually signed for the Rockies. Let's talk about the minor league signings and guys who could actually make an impact for the Rockies. And let's face it, these aren't signings that are going to wow you. And it is kind of hard to look at just because that infield, I think, needs a lot of help. The starting rotation needs help. And so a couple of guys, obviously, you have Chad Stevens, who had 13 at-bats at the major league level last year. He batted 154. Nicky Lopez has 7 years of MLB experience. And in 2021, he batted 300. Not bad. Not bad for 2021. The problem is in 2025, his batting average started with a 0. He had a .042 batting average with a 220 OPS in 2025. And then you've got John Brebbia, who in 2023 had a 3.99 ERA. But in 2024, that obviously rose. And in 2025, he had a 7.7 ERA. So you're looking at this lot here of just great talent. And you have to decide, hey, some of you guys are probably going to have to play. Like, you look at the team, there's a decent chance we see Nicky Lopez or Chad Stevens called up. Or Machín, who was also signed. Vimael Machín, who is a career minor leaguer. So, not bad. Not bad for what we're picking from for these minor league contracts. And that's just exactly what they are, right? They're guys that you take a flyer on. You don't expect the world out of them. But the thing is, for how badly right now Amador's playing, currently in his off-season league, Karros obviously being inexperienced at third, there's a chance you're going to have to rely on one of these guys. And we'll just see. We'll just have to wait and see. I think if any of them were to actually step up, I would see Nicky Lopez being the first called up just because he has that major league experience. But it's obviously concerning because of how bad he's been in recent years. I also wouldn't be surprised if Brebbia is called up to be like that fourth or fifth guy in the rotation due to the extreme lack of experience that we see in that starting rotation. So those are probably the first two names that you would most likely see be called up. But also all depends on spring training. They could show up to spring training, be awful, and they don't make the roster. That is a very realistic possibility as well for all the names. But I think if there are two names to make an impact, it'd be those two because they have that the most major league experience. They could hopefully bring something to the table. And it's not like we're asking for a lot. We talk about it often on the show. We're not asking for a lot. The team didn't win 50 games last year. It's not hard to improve when you're that bad. But these players are pretty bad. And it's a little bleak in terms of these signings. They're just... I hope I'm wrong, though. Right? Like, I hope Chad Stevens gets called up and is slugging like 500 and hitting nukes at Coors Field. That would be awesome. But at the moment, I just don't really see that happening just because of what we've seen from these players. We have a history to build off of. And we just need something. We need something in that infield, and we need something for that starting rotation. So we'll have to just wait and see. The hope is sign a guy at a major league level contract that you know will make an impact. But we don't know if this front office will do that this offseason. So it could be Nicky Lopez, batting in the 8th spot, and he's hitting 210 for you. If he's batting 210, though, that's probably what you would expect. And it's actually above expectations. That's not even what you would expect. That's above expectations. Alas, I'm rambling. Let's get into that last segment, and let's talk about Ezequiel Tovar, who... he had a down year last year. A lot of his stats were just cut in half. He obviously dealt with injuries, had about 390 plate appearances. And so he is the star for this team. What Goodman did was sensational, and we want him to obviously have that same type of success in 2026. But Tovar is the guy I think we all expect to be the star of this team. He's only 24 years old. Obviously great defensively, but he obviously just couldn't stay healthy for most of last year. or at least for half of last year, I should say. And so for Tovar, that's going to be the real big thing is can he get that slugging back up? It dipped to about 400 in 2025. He only had 9 home runs and just a few more doubles. And so that's going to be a big thing is can he get that bat back to life? I think so. I wouldn't be too worried about him. That just can happen in baseball, right? You deal with a couple injuries, some of those main stats dip, but you really need him to be performing well at the top of that lineup for the Rockies to have any sort of success. I think the expectation or the hope for him this year is that he can be an all-star for the Rockies. Rockies obviously probably only going to send one guy to the all-star game unless him and Hunter Goodman both perform at a high level. Then it puts the MLB or puts the National League in a tough spot where it's like, hey, there's these 2 guys that are both stars. We probably need to send them both. That would probably be what the Rockies are looking for, is that they're able to send just 2 studs to the All-Star game. That means that their offense is clicking a little bit better. It probably means they're winning a few more games as well. But for Tovar, the expectation is that he gets back to last year where he has over 500 at-bats. Can be batting in that 2 or 3 hole, and really can be obviously a solidifying force for the Rockies, both offensively and defensively. And defensively, maybe even more important because we've talked about how bad that infield was last year, and on paper how it's not that much improved this season. There's going to be a huge weight on Tovar and what he's able to do. It's just that's one of the big things. If you're a really bad team, there's obviously not much weight in general, but for the few stars that you have, there's going to be high expectations to at least improve and perform well. And so for him and for Goodman and for Doyle, those are really the 3 guys that we expect to play well day in and day out. So for Tovar, I'm expecting a bounce back year. I'm not worried that he's gonna continue to slump or anything like that. I really think he's gonna have what could be seen as a breakout year. I think he technically already had that in 2024, but I expect an even better year in 2026, especially if he stays healthy. That's going to be the big thing. If he stays healthy, I'm expecting a really big year from him. But until then, we're just going to have to wait. We're going to continue to talk about free agency, what moves the Rockies could possibly make just to make this season more bearable. I think that's why we talk about some of the guys that they can possibly sign. Just make it a season where you're putting on a game at home or you're going to the park, you can at least be somewhat happy of what you're seeing on the field. Just a competitive team. That's all we ask for. Anyways, I'm Scott Ayers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.